Can you hear me?
I can. You can hear me, yes?
Yep. Excellent. Yep.
All right.
Okay. So here's what I've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to go over sort of the most what I think are like the two most abstract parts of this essay to help people figure out like what they're supposed to write about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have I think are already there. You know where your individual document is because I'll just do stuff on there and then you'll have it.
Yeah,
Um,
I
you're
can see
there.
my individual
All right,
mine, yeah.
perfect. All right. So here's the thing. Um, Yeah, I'm going to talk about the first two, basically vocabulary and writing techniques. Because so it's like, what are people actually supposed to be writing about as opposed to just being like, words, they're important and all that. Let me see if I can stay on here for. So here's what I mean. So the first thing is, right, try to give people concrete things sort of to write about. Meaning, the first, the question that you're answering for vocabulary is like, so why is it important to have a strong vocabulary in this job slash subject area or whatever? The
Mm-hmm.
first answer for everybody is because you have to communicate with different audiences. So you're trying to think of in the job that you've been thinking about, you're trying to think about who are all the different audiences that that person needs to communicate with, right? People who
Yeah.
maybe work under them, maybe the public, like maybe the government, maybe I don't know. So like you're trying to think of all the possible ones. It depends obviously on the job, but so you try to identify, the audiences, all of the possible audiences that you might communicate with in that job. Then you're trying to sort of talk about the language as it applies to those. So here's what I mean by that. So you talk about different audiences, and then you're going to be like, all right, there's these audiences, and then you could basically think of vocabulary in three different ways or three categories, where general is
Mm-hmm.
like a word that, is important to your area, but also everybody knows, right? Like
Yeah.
computer, right?
So
That would
like
be something that's pretty.
something that you talk to like the customers about.
Yeah, I say exactly. That's that language and that level and so on. And then specialized language is supposed to be the stuff that you're talking about with colleagues and things who you work with. You're working on a project,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, doing that. There's certain language and that you use for them. And then there's jargon, which is, I think, meant to be really like the most technical expert language above every, almost even in the research world, who knows? But like, so, and it depends. You might be in something that has a lot of jargon, like in a job, whatever, that relies a lot on jargon, meaning that it's highly technical, and that's just how we speak. Or you need more specialized language, which is sort of in between, right? It's like the general public doesn't really get it, but also it's not so beyond or so hyper technical.
Yeah.
So you want to give an example of like each type of word, basically. So you go, all right, there's three types in general, and in this discipline, in computer science, and or if you could do either like computer science generally, or you can do the job if you wanted. Depends on I guess what you have for sources, but you want to give an example of each of the types. Here's general language by what I'm talking about. Here's what specialized language is, and here's what jargon is. And you can probably even look up like jargon in information analysis or something. I don't know, and it could help you understand the difference. But so
Mm-hmm.
if you give an example of each of them, then you're just talking about them. So you're like, all right, so in this job, which ones are most important? Are you talking to the public often, or clients, or whoever, or are you ever talking to the government, or just communicating with your people? So you're basically, what role do each of these play in your job area? So that's what you're talking about. So the first thing for vocabulary is this audience, right?
Yeah.
Different audiences, three categories of language. Here's how it all goes down in my world, in my subject area. This is going to be. Okay, then there's one more sort of main idea. If you have, do you have the sheet that's on the left here that I'm drawing from?
Yes, it's
Okay,
the
there's
writing
another,
assignment 2 explanation
yeah,
document,
and
yeah.
there's a yes, exactly. And if you use that, that's better because that version is updated. because I got rid of stuff in vocabulary that I thought was too abstract after I read it. So after you do audience and you have the sort of language things, the other reason that it matters, like having a strong vocabulary or broad, I guess, would be because you need to be accurate in your world. Everybody needs accuracy. And in order to demonstrate what you mean by accuracy, you want to pick a couple of words that maybe most people would think are the same, right? So I picked marketing and advertising, and unless I was in the business, right? I mean, regular people are sort of like, yeah, they're the same. You could use them interchangeably. So what I would do is then I'm going to explain how they're not the same, right? So I'm going to explain the difference between the two. And what I'm doing by doing that is demonstrating the importance of having sort of a broad base of vocabulary, right? Because I need to know the words that have the precise meaning. And, this matters in this world, but it matters in other worlds, like even more. Right? I'm thinking like, I don't know, in the medical world, like you better not like screw that up. It seems like it matters. So, but in any event, so I wanted everybody to sort of try to find two words in your own discipline area that most people would be like, yeah, they're the same. You explain how they're not. And then you're sort of saying like, so this is why it matters. Like knowing vocabulary and knowing the meaning is the key to accuracy, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So audience and accuracy, those are the two main things. And then the last part of this is about how are you going to get better at this, you yourself? So it's like, how am I going to improve or build on a strong vocabulary for this business? And people, when you first think this, most people are thinking of like, well, I'll just read more or whatever, which I don't know if anybody really would, but to be fair. So here's what I want. I want people to point out or think of actual experiences you can make yourself have that will help you basically build vocabulary, because that's the way we sort of actually learn like the terms, right, for words. Like if we're doing stuff or we're seeing it or whatever, we're much better at remembering vocabulary. So like, for example, I've been telling people you could look up, and you're trying to find an actual specific thing, like going to a conference, right? So there's a conference in Las Vegas about like in the flow of information in the 20th century, whatever. And you're like that, you could go to that and be exposed to who's going to be there and like the vocabulary you're going to learn. You're going to learn a lot more about whatever information flow and something. So like going to a conference is one. What's the internship like with a specific company, right? So, and then if you wanted to do books, you would want to read books or talk about books that are like written by like expert people or leaders in the field or something like that. So these three ways, right? This will help your vocabulary, but it obviously would do more than like no one goes just to build their vocabulary, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So instead, you just introduce them in the vocabulary world. So at the end of your vocabulary segment, you're like, all right, these are the things that I can do, and just introduce them. There's a conference, the information. I could do an internship at somewhere. I would read books by these famous people. When you get to, there's a section, right? Background knowledge section. That's sort of when you can elaborate on these. That's when I would, so you can use them down here and like elaborate. I mean, like, so at that specific conference that I previously mentioned, here are the people who are going to be there. And here's the part of the business world I'm going to learn more about, like very specifically about whatever the flow of digital information or whatever the conference's deal is. And so you're also adding to your background knowledge of your subject by doing things. So you would just sort of elaborate on how, because it's sort of the same idea. So there's a connection basically, right? I do this stuff, my vocabulary gets better, but also I really learn more about the whole area or some aspect of my area.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that might be the setup. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. The second part, so that's it for vocabulary. I have audiences, accuracy, stuff you're going to do, and then you can build on that.
Yeah.
Writing technique. This is the other one that I think is super vague for people. And so people end up writing like, I need to, I don't know, write clearly, short or something. So I tried to make this, again, a little more concrete so you have something to actually address when you're talking about it. So you want to think about it in from three perspectives, I guess. So there's types of documents, there's writing at a paragraph level, and writing at a sentence level. So here's what I mean by these. The first one is you're, giving 4 or 5 examples of the types of documents that are sort of common in the where your job is, in the area of your job, right? So that everybody deals with and so on. So you're trying to find, reports or who knows, I have like purchase orders. I mean, some sort of, you come up with a bunch, 4 or 5 examples and you can just state them, but then you're going to pick one of them that's hopefully the most interesting one, or interesting to you anyway. And then you're going to do this rhetorical situation thing, which we did at the very beginning of the course, where you basically pick the document, right? So it's some, I don't know, logistics report on a something. I need to know more documents. And then you're just going to go with that one, you're just going to talk about it more in depth using the language of the rhetorical situation, right? So who would write this particular type of document? What are situations that arise that make this document necessary? Who's the audience for the document? What's the actual purpose of it? What's the main subject of a document like this? So you're just trying to give people a sense of like, yeah, what communication is, what the rhetorical situation is like, and then now you've also applied it somewhat to, a specific area. So that's one part of writing techniques, is being able to understand and know the rhetorical situation and then, acting accordingly, I suppose. The next two you might be able to put together, because the paragraph level really is. So were you able to find any like written documents by students, like
Yeah,
like college writer people?
yeah,
Only okay, so if you have you need one of those or two, but one for sure. So you're gonna, for the paragraph world, you're gonna basically just compare a paragraph they wrote to a paragraph that you wrote. And so you're going to say things like very, you know, about the structure of the paragraph, right? Like how long the sentences are, how much do they use or cite research in the paragraph, um, types of punctuation or whatever. So like you're just basically like comparing it, and you're like, here's what I do, here's what they do, and so this is what I need to do to get better, basically at a paragraph level. Because in theory, you should be looking at documents that are like written by, a senior thesis in the subject we're pretending. So it's supposed to be good in theory, right? So that's what the paragraph is. You compare yours to another student's. Then, and again, like I don't know how long that really is. So maybe you sort of put paragraph and sentence together. Because sentence is, you're looking at the whole document. So you're sort of perusing it and you're trying to find examples of these writing strategies. And you're trying to find like 2 or 3 examples. And so you're like, and you'll quote, from part of it. So you're like, this type of essay that the student wrote or whatever, this thesis, in it, they use a lot of cause and effect. And that, they're explaining the causes of this and the effects of this. And here's a quote from it to show you. It also uses a lot of definition. It defines a lot of terms for the reader. And so here's an example of them doing that. That's it. So that's what sentence level is. Sentence level for us in this world, as far as technique goes, meaning what type of writing strategy do they use? So the whole thing together, right? You've sort of gone through from the very big, like the document itself and what it does, down to the sentence, which is, does it describe, define, or whatever. But I thought does that help? Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay. Because I hope that's more solid than just like write about writing or something, because that seems tough. So, all right. So those are the two that I really focus on, like just during these conferences. Do you have questions about any specific other part, or any other questions at all about in general, since I sort of just started right in?
Hmm.
The other three, so yeah, the other three, basically, if you have this document and you just look at it and you basically write to it, like what it's telling you to think about or example of, you should be in good shape. So I tried to make it as all of it is clear, as I was trying to make this vocabulary and the writing thing clearer. I also tried to make this stuff fairly clear.
Yeah, they're pretty self-explanatory compared to
Right.
the first two.
Exactly. So that's what I'm thinking. The only other thing I mentioned is the conclusion's not like an essay conclusion and as a regular, some sort of traditional thing. It's basically a reflective paragraph. So you're like, after having gone through this process of writing this, like from the very beginning and all that, you're basically trying to be like, so here's things that I learned or didn't know about my subject or about my major. Um, how did writing the essay affect the way you think about those things or feel about those things, and then how does it make you think about writing and the writing process in your world? So anyway, it's basically a personal reflection, so it doesn't really involve, you're not having to do the let's put this all together at the end type thing. Yeah, so I don't know. Do you have any other questions? Or are we good? The other thing the other thing is if you write a couple paragraphs about whatever vocabulary, any of this, if you copy and paste them here,
Yeah.
on your individual document, you just send me an email and be like, I just added stuff to my document. Can you take a look? So I'll come directly here, read them, make comments, suggestions about it. You can ask me questions. So we'll sort of use this document, like our direct connection as you,
Okay.
finish out all this stuff. So whenever you have stuff or whenever you want me to look at it, you just sort of put them there, let me know. I'll show up. And because I sort of want to do it, as if you write, as people are writing, this is my new idea as far as like trying to give suggestions as people are writing things, right? So here's 2 paragraphs, take a look at these, and then you could keep on writing. Like, I just want to try that as opposed to, hey, finish the entire thing and then I'll read it and then I'll do, you know what I mean? So as far as comment and feedback, I think it might be a better way. But anyway, so that's the plan. We're just sort of going to use this document. And then we're having class on Monday. This is our last class, or it's the last class, I think, for this. And that's when so in theory, this is due on Monday. On Monday also, so in our short class, I'm going to talk about the final exam, which is, there's already the answer sheet up on the Blackboard if you want to look at it, but I'm going to be giving out or handing out like the 3 short articles that people need to have in order to do the final exam. And so then you'll have the articles, you have the answer sheet there, and then you'll have till Friday to do it, basically. And then you're just submitting it online. So there's no actual, show up final exam thing. It's just online. So you so this coming Monday, I'll just make sure everybody's clear about all of it, basically. And I'm going to actually hand out physical copies of the articles, just because I think it's easier to have a physical copy of that when you're typing. I don't know. But that's the plan. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Well, email me. You have questions. Let me know what I can do, or if you get stuff going, you want me to take a look, just let me know, and I'll probably I guess I'll see you on Monday.
Then I'll see you on Monday.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.